So today I'm here with Harriet Waley Cohen, and some of you may know Harriet because she's done webinars for Club Soda before. But today we thought we'd have a conversation about emotions and inner critics, your inner critic, which is actually quite good because Harriet's bought her emotional support dog.
I have.
That's what I've decided that your dog Fizzy is.
My children say that. They say that she's an emotional support dog.
You know, that won't get you into John Lewis.
It won't, no.
No, I saw them throw out a woman with a small chihuahua the other week. She did try to claim the emotional support dog, but no, it won't get you into John Lewis. So, Harriet, tell me a bit about your sobriety and where you are in your journey.
So, I am sober. My drinking goal was always complete sobriety, and I have been completely clean and sober for over 17 years now, since the 1st of October 2002.
Cool. So you've got 10 years on me. So
yeah, I'm an oldie now.
You're an old hand.
Yeah.
And I think what we wanted to discuss today was there's a big, I think emotions are a big part of changing your drinking habits, partly because we've learned to suppress our emotions by drinking. And so I very much feel that since the age of 14, I've dealt with every emotion through drinking. And then as you change, you can get very emotional. And then even when you're 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, you're still dealing with emotions. So I thought that'd be a good topic for us today.
Definitely. I think it's the big deal, actually, because when you first change your drinking, whether you've cut back radically or you've completely given up like you and I have, you find out why you were drinking, and you find out more and more deeply for an initial period of time, and your emotions come flooding back. They say, don't they? The good news is you get your emotions back. The bad news is
you get your emotions back. And I describe it a bit like living life in high definition.
Yes.
And often we have high hopes for getting sober. We think that suddenly we're going to lose loads of weight, everything's going to be perfect.
There will always be shoes in our size in the shoe shop.
And all of those things. and we realise that it doesn't quite work like that because life gets in the way and you have to deal with things that you've really pushed away before.
Exactly. And I think initially it can be quite... the things are quite in your face, like how do I deal with feeling very angry, very upset, very this, very that. There can be quite big flashpoints, or everything feels like a big flashpoint at the beginning. And then as time goes on, I actually think the challenges become more nuanced because you've learned how to deal with the more extreme emotions. And then it's like, oh, I've got this family conflict that seems to be coming out in this angle, and you have to try to resolve those sorts of things. But initially, I think you do find out very strongly what drinking was keeping a lid on or helping you to just sweep under the carpet.
So it's a really good place to start then. So for those people in their early days, you may even be on your day one.
Yes.
What sort of things begin to happen?
Well, I can talk about my experience, and then maybe you can share your experience. So I had a job when I stopped drinking. And I remember that in the first few months, apart from the time when I was in the office, when I had something else to think about, although I was quite jittery and anxious in the office and worried that I was going to get invited out for drinks or something, I mostly wanted to cry, actually. I remember feeling that the only place where I could hold it together was in the office, and then the rest of the time I just felt like I was falling apart.
Why that? Surely you were on a mission. You're on a mission to not drink. Why did you feel that you were going to just be a wreck?
All the feelings were coming up to the surface. Everything that I'd buried, everything that I'd swept under the carpet started to rise to the surface. And I think when you're still in it, you can be in denial to some extent about the damage you've done to yourself, the damage you've done to other people, just the general damage in your whole life. But once you stop, as you said, it's technicolor. You've got to face everything. You don't have to face everything all at once. In fact, I think if any of us had to face all of it all at once, no one would ever manage to stay stopped. but there's a lot to deal with. And it was weird because when I say that, I also remember feeling on a massive high. So there must have been a duality to it where I felt like I was on a real high and like being, I was much more productive and I could think much more clearly. But I also think that on an emotional level, things felt much more extreme and much more pronounced. There was nothing to take the edge off.
No, that's true. And I think for me, there were lots of highs because every day is another day in the bag.
Yes.
Navigating certain social situations when your energy starts to come back. You begin to feel really excited about it. And I really did feel that excitement of energy actually, because I wasn't, this continually hungover person. But then I guess I had to deal with some feelings of guilt I had, still not knowing what I was going to do about work because I had, I knew that I had to leave the job that I was in because I knew that's what was behind my drinking. So trying to make a big old change and a big emotional change while still feeling really guilty actually. Guilty that I'd wasted the last 5 years of a job I didn't enjoy and had drunk my way through it. So I hadn't even taken the opportunity that had presented me with.
I had exactly that. I felt as though I had so many wasted opportunities and relationships.
Such an idiot.
Yeah, and ashamed and like, oh my God, because at the time I kidded myself and I thought no one had noticed. Of course they'd noticed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how can you start begin dealing with those feelings of regret? I think they are regret and guilt, while you're also trying to change your relationship with alcohol, because that's quite difficult because that gives you those highs and lows.
Definitely. I think for me, the number one thing that's worked for me, and this is gone the whole way through my sobriety with anything, is that you literally just can't change the past. And forgiveness is really about letting go of all hope of a better past. And this is definitely about self-forgiveness. And realising that actually, in order to move forwards, letting go of the fact that it could have been different is really important. You go, well, that is actually how it was. However, I get to create a different future. So you can almost in that kind of martial arts way absorb it and push it forward in a positive way.
And accept that you have those feelings, because I still have those feelings now. I regret some decisions that I've made, not all of them around drinking, but certainly all around the fact that I was making bad decisions while I was drinking. So they weren't directly related to alcohol, but they were sort of how chaotic my life was becoming. And I still get that though. I still feel that.
Do you? You still have regret? You still give yourself a hard time?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel sad, but I also have enormous compassion for the person that I was then. Because I've done a lot of work on myself with different modalities and different programs, and whether that's coaching or therapy and anything and everything in between. So I really understand what went on earlier in my life to lead to the point where this is where it got to. And I think that actually doing that work has enabled me to fully understand and have that compassion. So I can feel sad, but I don't think I regret it. And also, I don't regret it because it's one of my greatest strengths now. Like sobriety is one of my real superpowers. And being able to have compassion and inspire other people that you can change your life completely as well. And if I hadn't gone through it, I wouldn't be inspiring people.
I think there's something really important that you said there, which is that you started to learn.
Yeah.
So, because at the minute, at the beginning stages of changing your drinking, you're continually reading about changing drinking in order to give yourself that strength to get through. And it's very much focused on not drinking, finding techniques and tools to deal with that everyday craving. But I guess the one thing that you can do is when you get a big emotion or a big feeling, because they are going to come, it's supposed to go, okay, hang on a minute. Here's a feeling that I've not had to deal with before. Let's read about that feeling instead of reading about drinking. How could I deal with the fact that, actually for years I might have argued with my kids, for example, because it was easier to argue than to sit and rationally think about it. How could I now deal with that?
It differently.
Yeah. And
I think that's the real trick and with emotional sobriety is that it's about it being okay for you to have whatever emotion you're having, so long as your response doesn't hurt you or anybody else. It's fine to be angry, just don't hurt someone, don't hurt yourself, etc. And actually, I think it's important to say this is not just with the more challenging emotions like anger or fear, anxiety, frustration. I don't know about you, but I used to love getting trashed when things were going really good. You know, celebrations. So actually, it's as much about getting through the good times without going, it would be even better with a glass of whatever.
How can I enhance this feeling of happiness?
Exactly. And I, because I do give talks actually on emotional well-being, and one of the things I take people through at the beginning is understanding your emotions, and that they're just like signposts. They're just markers, like flags waving that say, pay attention to me, I've got information for you. So, for example, anger can be a sign that someone's crossed your moral code or violated one of your core values. And so if you can understand that, you can go, okay, well, what information is there for me in this situation? Oh, okay, I'm feeling blah, blah, blah. Therefore, the information in this is ABC. And so I can work with that. And then you can release it, and you can see your emotions as something incredibly helpful that are there to guide you, rather than something to be really frightened of that might make you drink again. Actually, it's like, wow, okay, fantastic. I've got some information here. Because I think part of changing your drinking, or a huge part of it, is about getting back on your own side and seeing your emotions as something that's super helpful rather than something to be worried about is part of that.
I'm recognising them. So I realise now, I used to, those stories you tell yourself about drink. And so I used to sit in the pub on my own with a glass of wine and a newspaper and think, I'm taking some time for myself.
Yes.
And I'm being very civilised, and I'm feeling very content in this moment. And it was about 3 or 4 months after giving up drinking, I went into a cafe and I had a newspaper and I had a different drink. But I had a profound sense of happiness because I realised that I also felt content. It was the action of sitting down, taking some time for myself and having something that was nice, but not alcohol necessarily, that made me feel content. And so it's really good to recognise those things, because some of those emotional things you'll get back.
Yes.
But in different ways.
Definitely.
And in different situations.
I think, I can't remember who wrote this, but I've slightly adopted it and stolen it, is keep the ritual but change the substance.
Yeah.
So you don't have to not, go for Sunday brunch, but you might want to have a nice cup of tea or whatever, or a nice soft drink instead of Bucks Fizz or whatever it was you were having before.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you can you realise that it was the occasion and the people and the place and the food that you're stuffing in your face. Yes. That was the important thing in it. Yes. And really, you can recreate those, and they do get easier.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that helps people in terms of their emotions is to notice what are the self-soothing things that you tend to do when you're having feelings that you're not sure you want to feel. And for some people, it could be eating. For other people, it could be smoking, or it could be mindlessly scrolling on their phone, or shopping, or texting, or how do you check out? And then start to realise, well, actually, that's a sign that there's a feeling you don't want to feel. So let's just pause and feel the feeling, instead of going, I've just had an email and I don't know how to deal with it. I think I'll mess about on Facebook for half an hour.
Yeah. Or me, and one of the things I've had to deal with is my ability to want to instantly react to things, which often makes things worse.
Yes.
So I've had to, I know that...
Learn to just pause.
Yeah, probably Lucy will say that he doesn't see any sign of that, but I am better than I used to be. I used to be an instant reactor, and because I'm an activator as well, I want to always take action. So the other thing we can touch on is the inner critic, because I think the inner critics are really... it throws you off balance. And I hear people express that in many ways. Some people give their inner critic a name, like the wine witch and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also it expresses itself in the fact that people talk about not being good enough, not being able to do this. They're a lost cause, they're a failure. And that's all your inner critic talking.
Yeah, I'm not lovable. There's no point. Why should I even try? And actually, the inner critic basically is trying to get you drunk. It's like that the friend that doesn't have your best interests at heart. It actually has your worst interests at heart.
It's a really good way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
because
why
actually
it made me have an almond croissant this morning.
Did it?
Yeah.
See, because I have an inner cheerleader now, which the voice in my head is soft, kind, compassionate.
How do you get
wants
that?
the best for me.
I want it.
Yeah, I know. Everyone wants it. Whenever I say, I've got an inner cheerleader, everyone's like, I want an inner cheerleader.
How do we get an inner cheerleader?
Okay, so I think the first thing is awareness. Now, I know you encourage mindfulness to the Club Soda community, and that this is a really important component, because if you don't notice the voice in your head and that it is saying negative things to you, and that you have a choice about whether to believe it or not, then you're stuffed. So the first step is noticing that it's there, and also noticing the kinds of things that it's saying to you. And I think that the second thing is to really know very, very deeply that not everything that you think is true. And a belief is just a thought that you think over and over. So if you're constantly thinking, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to succeed at this, what's the point, and you allow yourself to keep thinking it, then that's going to become your reality. Whereas if you practice mindfulness, and when those thoughts start to come, you say to yourself, oh, do I want to believe that? Is that where I want to go?
Is it really true? You need to combat it
Is
with...
it true?
That's
the number one question.
With logic.
Yeah,
logic.
Definitely. And also look for evidence. Yeah. Look for evidence. And don't be afraid to, I think, go to a number of people who really love you and really believe in you and say, what's good about me? Do you believe in me? Because in the beginning, sometimes you have to borrow other people's belief. I know that I did that. I was, I had an amazing group of people around me who really believed that I could not only get sober, but that I could stay sober. And when I was having wobbles, they go, no, you really can do this, and it really will be better on the other side. And then it's really about, once you've noticed the voice, you've decided that it's not true, you've decided you want to think other thoughts that are more positive and more supportive of you, it's about practicing that over and over, but being really kind with yourself about it, because it's not always easy. And I don't think the inner critic ever goes away. You hear people like Richard Branson and Oprah Winfrey and phenomenally successful people who say they have an inner critic. It's just what you do with it that counts.
Yeah, and I think really early on what it can do is, because you're trying to change your behaviour, your inner critic goes absolutely bonkers. Why can't you just take the path of least resistance? This feels too hard. You know, why are you doing this? Which means it feels like there's a fight going on in your head. And you have to take the side that really, really is supporting you.
I actually think, I remember early on, whenever I would try and get in a fight, it would fight back. Whereas I think that if this works for me, and it's worked for lots of my clients, so I think this is worth sharing and giving a go, that rather than telling it to pee off or whatever, or getting in a fight with it, is that you go, thank you very much for your opinion, as if it was a drunken street tramp hurling abuse at you who you have no respect for. Or I often say, give it the voice of someone you have no respect for. A screaming toddler, a street tramp, I don't know, Katie Hopkins, Donald Trump, whatever works.
I was going to try and avoid the political references, but anyway.
Well, luckily I've said
wow.
Well, I actually saw a meme that is so genius that I share it, which is this woman who'd been in therapy for years, and she came up with this idea in therapy that whenever the voice said, you can't do this, why are you even bothering, that she would imagine that it was Donald Trump, and then she would just be like, and screw you and your wall, I will show you. And actually, when you realise that you don't have to believe it. You can give it another voice, and then you can create.
It's a thought, not a command, right?
It's a thought, not a belief, not a truth, not a command. And you can create the voice that you want in your head, and you can give it a personality. You can have a fantastic cheerleader that can be, the grandmother who really loved you, or an older, wiser version of you that only wants the best for you, or you can choose for it to be your best friend. Or, for example, I actually have a wooden sign in my house that says, be the person your dog thinks you are. So it could be,
dog people, honestly.
Yeah, I know, cats people.
Oh, God.
But do you see where I'm going with it?
Yeah.
You can change it. You can change it, but it does require
some practice.
It requires practice. It's not an overnight matter, and it requires what one of my mentors says to me. When she first said it to me, I was like, ooh, made all my hackles go up. But she said the magical phrase, radical personal responsibility. You have to take responsibility for what's going on in your head and not be a victim, because whatever's happened in the past, you may have been a victim in the past, but now you get to choose what you're going to do about it and how you're going to respond. And what's happened in the past is gone. It has happened. You can't make it not have happened, but you can choose how you're going to respond and how you want to train your mind going forward.
And I think that's another thing to think about in this, because at the minute you'll be very, people can be very focused on, you can be very focused on the change that's happening now and knowing that you need to be alcohol free, and step by step you are getting another day under your belt.
Yes.
But what you're also doing is practicing some new skills that will really put you in good stead for the longer term, because dealing with emotions don't go away. No. This is suddenly you doing emotional development at high speed, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, when I think of it in the early days, probably the things that would throw me would be getting an email that I didn't know how to deal with, or thinking that my partner was cross with me, or those kinds of things would be a massive deal. Or going to my first, because I worked in banking, at the time, going for team drinks. These were massive deals. Whereas now, as in the last few years, I've dealt with getting divorced. I've dealt with setting up my own business. I've dealt with being very severely injured in a car accident and now having a permanent pain condition. And I've dealt with having cancer. And at no point through any of that has it ever occurred to me that a drink would make life easier, because I've got that emotional literacy to go, God, this is a really scary situation. I am angry. I feel it's unfair. I don't know what to do. And I think it's really important to say that the asking for help thing, when your emotions feel overwhelming, is one of the best tools that there is. Like being honest and just saying, I am really frightened. This feels really unfair, or whatever you need to say out loud, and just talking it out with somebody, whether that's a close friend or a therapist or your doctor, whoever, just makes a world of difference. I mean, the more difficult situations I've had to deal with, the more that I've up-leveled the kind of support that I'm getting, and going, right, okay, I need to pull in all my favours right now, or I need to hire somebody to help me, or just asking for help.
And I think it's we often focus again on the very visible things about changing drinking and how you might look and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you're building yourself an amazing emotional reserve that is, an emotional set of skills which are really important. And so don't underestimate those. Don't knock them back as being trivial
it's
and
huge
side issues.
Because this is why I was one of those people who I drank to get away from how I felt and from the very loud critical voice in my head. And for me, drinking was my solution. And then it became an extra problem on top of all of that stuff and not feeling good enough. And then I had to find another solution.
So how over the long term have you dealt with those strong emotions and that inner critic? Because for me, I'm still learning things about that 7.5 years on. Changing drinking still reveals itself to me in many ways. Even when I'm feeling really miserable, I still find that not drinking is giving back to me in the way that I'm learning and about myself.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that I have to be on my own side. I have to honour myself in every area of life. And I have to behave in line with my own spiritual, moral, ethical compass as well in every area of life. And then what happens when I behave like that, and that includes things like setting boundaries, what I eat, what I wear, hence, when I'm waving knickers on stage and telling people to wear amazing underwear, how you treat yourself, how you show up in other, in your relationships, and take responsibility for how other people treat you by setting boundaries, by saying what's okay, what's not okay, and what you bring into the world behaviourally, they will dictate how you feel about yourself. And when you're doing all those things, treating yourself with love, showing up beautifully in your relationships, bringing forth only things that you feel amazing about into the world behaviourally, your inner critic's got nothing to talk about.
Yes, it's true.
And fears are always based in the future. And it's always based on, catastrophizing or what if. So if you can just bring yourself back into the present moment, everything is always fine in the present moment. I mean, literally, even as I was standing in the anaesthetic room, about to have 8 hours or 9 hours or whatever it was of surgery that would change my life forever, in that moment, however scared I was like, well, I'm actually fine. I've got an amazing team of people around me who are going to take care of me. They've got my best interests at heart. Everything is fine. Right here, right now. And often, if we can just come back into our bodies, get out of our heads and notice what's going on around us, actually everything's usually always fine.
Yeah, and I'm really interested in that values piece, because when I always talk about the fact that I thought I was a people person, then I began to doubt that, because holding a conversation is really difficult with a hangover. And one of the things I've regained is recognising that small interactions with people that happen make me very happy. But actually, the way I want to run Club Soda is partly about my values of wanting to be collaborative, because I enjoy working with other people. And so I have that ability to now work within my own values framework, and those things make me happy. And that's really interesting, because you trust your gut by the values that you set. And so I trust my gut more. And on balance, I have to remember that we're all trying to do good in this world. And there are a couple of people who are really annoying. And we've actually banned some people from Club Soda and some brands from the festival in the past for being very badly behaved. But I don't feel bad about those at all, because, they actually went against our values and were making us unhappy.
Absolutely. And I think when you bring that down to the individual level, let's say you've got a value around honesty, it's probably one of the easiest ones to think of an example about, yet you're fiddling your taxes and you're not being honest to the benefits people or whatever, or you've lied to somebody about something, maybe to get some money for drinking, whatever, apparently the average human tells quite a lot of lies every day, don't they?
Yeah, I imagine so.
Yeah. So if one of your values is honesty, yet you've skipped over the train barrier that day, that's going to make your inner critic louder. And that's going to make you more likely to not like yourself, and more likely to feel crappy about yourself, and more likely at the end of the road of a number of cumulative breaches of your own values, and it all getting louder and louder and more horrible in your head, you're more likely to have a drink. Whereas the more that you honour your values behaviourally, the more that you are moving further and further and further away from drinking, because the noise in your head is super chilled.
So how could people go through that process of writing down values? Because, you can there are big ticket things that we all think we should be. Yeah. And this is like drinking as well. We know we should drink less. And so we say that we want to drink less every new year, even though we're not understanding why we want to drink less. And the same way as we know we shouldn't lie, we should be a better person. They're really nice big headlines, but actually,
be a better person. Yes, tip.
Yeah, I mean, what that is such an impossible value, and such a difficult one that you're never going to achieve that, right? So how do you begin to understand what do you mean by values, and what are the values that are important to you? How might you go about doing that?
I think initially, I think we get a feeling in our body when we do something we don't think we should be doing. You kind of get that like, oh God, am I going to get caught out? I don't like how this feels. And you can just notice the chatter in your body, in your head, and notice how your body feels, because it's a bit like when you're going to say yes when you should actually say no. And one of the ways that you can do this is you can imagine yourself doing something that you feel is really wrong. Like, I don't know, hitting somebody or stealing a bar of chocolate from the supermarket.
Or shouting at somebody that you care about.
Yes.
Because it's really easy to do when you're frustrated and upset.
Exactly. Or lying about being sick and not being able to go to work because actually you're hungover again. Just imagine doing something that makes you feel crappy about yourself. Really feel it in your body and say, right, what does it feel like? Does it feel like tightness in my chest? How is my breathing? Is it shallow and fast and anxious? what's going on in my tummy? Have I got any tingles, any knots in my shoulders, or what actually goes on physically? And then listen to the voice in your head. What is that saying? And then you know, okay, this is what it feels, actually the embodiment of me violating my own values. This is what it feels like.
And on the flip side, you can do that with things that make you happy.
Totally.
So, wow, this made me really happy because I did A, B, and C. Or I managed to have a discussion with my children and it didn't descend into chaos.
Exactly. Or I've done, I called somebody up who I know is going through a really tough time, and I asked them how they were, and I just listened, and I felt really good about myself afterwards because I was being kind and I was there for somebody. Or imagine how you feel when you wake up the next morning and you didn't drink. And you're super proud of yourself.
Because what values are not are political manifestos.
No.
Don't do that to yourself. They're very personal.
Yes.
And they're about how you feel.
How you view life, how you judge what's right and what's wrong, and how you judge other people actually as well. So the being on time value is quite an interesting one. Because some people value quality time and some people really value being on time. So if you've got a really good friend who's constantly late, but they're thinking, well, it doesn't matter, we've still got 2 hours together, and your particular value is being on time, you might feel very disrespected, but they're not thinking they're disrespecting you at all. Anyway, we're digressing a bit here. But values aren't things you can put in your handbag. So a book wouldn't be a value, but learning might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that actually brings us neatly back round to where we started. So if I can just try and encapsulate the conversation. So we've had a conversation about that, turning that inner critic into a cheerleader, about recognising that it's a thought in your head that you can begin to challenge, but you can also, is not an order.
No. And it's something that you can just observe and choose. Each of us have the choice to decide, do I want to believe this and turn this thought into a belief, or do I want to chuck it in the bin because it's actually no help to me whatsoever?
And then this in itself is a massive way to build your resilience for the longer term.
Yeah.
So don't see this inner turmoil that you're having to deal with as another thing that's getting in the way of your sobriety. It's actually a really important part
really helpful
of the process.
It's helping to guide you, actually, behaviourally. And it's also saying, oh my goodness, I hadn't realised that every time I have to hang out with my family, it makes me incredibly anxious and want to drink. And then that's a little signpost that says, well, what is it about being with your family? What do you need help with here to process, to think about what's going on? And then once you dealt with it, that's it, it's done. It's gone forever.
Yeah. And really you've got space to think about those emotions now because your head isn't always thumping and you haven't got this overwhelming tiredness. I could never have engaged with that before.
And you can think clearly. Yeah. Which, I mean, that was one of the things I hated was how stupid I felt because I was constantly checking out with, various substances.
Yeah. Oh, not.
And you don't feel ashamed.
Yeah.
You don't feel ashamed.
Yeah.
I don't think I've felt ashamed at all in sobriety because I haven't ever woken up going, oh my God, what did I do the next day? Not the next day. What did I do last night? Yeah.
And then finally, there's something about beginning to redefine your values based on actually what makes you feel anxious and what makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Because you can begin to live your life in line with those. And actually, it's a very big theme of our book, which is about, we don't start with how much do you want to drink and how long do you want to stop for? We start with what's the life that you want to build and how does changing your drinking help you achieve that?
Create the vision first and then put your drinking goals in after.
Yeah.
What will serve that?
Yeah, and it's a real big part of our book as well. So
wait, when's that coming out?
26th of December.
Boxing Day.
I know, when everyone's got a hangover.
Yeah, perfect. They're like, I need some help. Googling, but with my drinking.
Yeah, it'd be like that in the audiobook as well. So
brilliant.
It's really weird to have a book. But anyway.
I've got one coming out next year too.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
So there we are. Really lovely to see you, Harriet. And actually, you've been through a really difficult couple of years. So let me give you a massive hug.
Oh, you're welcome.
Because you've been such a good friend of ours. And, we're 5 years old in January. That's how long we've been going.
Well, when you think back to those first workshops we did.
Which you really helped us with, of which I'm always incredibly grateful.
You're welcome.
The kindness.
We can do them again if you want.
Yeah, we can. There's so much to do. There's so much I want to do, but we'll have to see. Yeah, but anyway.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye.